In this video, I would like to discuss a particular section in the Prentice Hall reader that is titled How to Read and Then Analyze an Essay. So first, I would like to look at pages 2 through 6 in the edition that I have, which is the 11th edition. I want to talk about the sections, why do you read essays in a writing course? I want to talk about how does reading an essay help you write an essay? How does writing help you become a better reader? What is the difference between being an active reader and a passive reader? And what steps do you follow to become an active reader? Then I want to talk about the different, phases or steps that you take to do that. That pretty much covers 2 through 6. So let me go back for a moment to why do you read essays in a writing course? You might think because it's a writing course, shouldn't we just be focusing on writing? And I think I said a few videos ago that maybe when I was talking about the syllabus, that my best writers are typically readers. And I also mentioned that people who read tend to absorb information about how to structure sentences, clarity, good vocabulary, vivid words. So there are all kinds of things that you absorb when you read that you're not consciously aware of. And that's why reading is so great for learning, because you can learn and you only think that you're having fun, but you're still learning a whole lot in the process. So this chapter tells you that you read essays in a writing course because, first of all, you need information. You need factual information. You need background information to help you. It's also good to help you, achieve a perspective, or it helps you understand other people's perspectives. We as humans have limited time in our lives, and we can't study and learn everything there is to know. But sometimes we can get a little bit of insight if we read somebody's essay, somebody who's taken the time to really learn and become well-versed in a topic, or if a person has a certain life experience that we've never had. We get a perspective that we ourselves don't possess. So it helps us, it broadens our minds in that way. And then another reason that the chapter offers is that when we read essays, again, we learn how to do things. If somebody says, write a narrative essay, a narrative descriptive essay, you might think, I don't even know what that is. But if somebody gives you an example, then at least you have a place to start. Okay, so not to say that you have to write the way somebody else writes. That's not what I'm saying. Because we always, I think, good students and good writers are going to take the work that somebody else has done, and we're going to learn from that a better way to express ourselves. Okay, this doesn't have anything to do with plagiarism. It's not about plagiarism. It's about inspiration. It's about a learning technique, and then applying technique to your own story, or in your own unique way of writing, for your own voice. I also want to talk about how reading helps write an essay. So again, this chapter talks about modeling and how you learn by reading other people's work. You learn how to be descriptive. You learn how to, organize an essay. If you're writing a narrative, you learn how certain writers handle moving from one event to the next event in an essay. So all of that is really important. And all the best writers do it. I mean, all the best writers learn from writers before them. So, that's just part of the process. All right, how does writing help you become a better reader? I think that the two work together. Reading helps you become a better writer, but the inverse is also true. The more attention you start to pay to language and how sentences work and how you make sentences and what makes one sentence more effective or less effective than another sentence, and vocabulary and all that stuff, once you start paying closer attention to that, you will find, so once you start paying more attention to that in your writing, you will find that you pay more attention to that when you're reading. All right? So again, reading and writing go hand in hand. When you improve one of those skills, I think you will improve the other one as well. What is the difference between being an active reader and a passive reader? I think those two words say a lot, active, passive. But when you are an active reader, you kind of do what I just did when I started reading this section. I read all the subheadings, okay? I told you what the title was. I read the subheadings. Something else you will want to do is when you're trying to, read a chapter, after you've read the title and the subheadings and thought about how the subheadings relate to the title, you want to kind of skim, you want to skim the chapter. So you might want to read the first and last sentences of each body paragraph. Read the intro, read the first paragraph, the intro, and read the conclusion. And that will give you a really good idea. That's called pre-reading. And that gives you a really good idea of what a chapter is going to be about. That way you can start anticipating questions. You can start anticipating what a given paragraph is going to contain. And that's really important, being able to anticipate and start formulating questions in your mind. So people who are active readers do those things. Also, people who are active readers ask questions, as I just mentioned. They also highlight the text, they underline things, they take notes, they write notes in the margins, all right? So if you are using a textbook that you don't want to write in, you need to find a different way of taking notes. I always wrote in my books because I realized that the resale value of my book was going to be just a fraction of what I would, what I paid for it anyway. So why not go ahead and get the use out of my textbook that's going to be most beneficial for me. So I was always a big note taker. Then after you get finished with the pre-reading, you move on to actually reading the chapter. From beginning all the way to the end of the chapter. And as you are reading, you might ask more questions, you might make more notes, but you might also be able to answer some of the questions that you posed when you were pre-reading. And that's really important. You want to make sure that you underline, highlight any words that you don't know, and please look them up, okay? Most people carry cell phones, smartphones with them. They can easily look up the definition of a word if they don't know the word. So that's very, very important to do. And then finally, when you're finished reading and you've asked questions as you've read and you've tried to answer questions and maybe you've made notes in the margins about maybe the writer's tone or what the writer's attitude seems to be about the information, it might be helpful to reread. Okay, and it really depends on what subject matter you're dealing with. I've heard some science teachers say that when students are studying for an exam, they think the way to study is just to reread the information from all the chapters. And this is very disconcerting to those instructors because they know that that's not the best way to really understand the information. If you read the chapter, if you took notes, if you underline, highlight, make marginal notes, attempt to answer your questions, then you might not have to reread. But let me say, if you're dealing with a class like a literature class, possibly a history class, I don't know, but definitely literature, you will have to reread it because you won't catch everything the first time. Okay, so sometimes it does depend on the field in which you're reading something, but rereading can be very useful depending upon the field in which you're reading. So we have pre-reading, reading, rereading. Also, you want to make sure that you know the difference among subject, thesis, audience, and purpose, and that you can identify those when you're reading. So you want to be able to figure out, okay, what is the essay about? That's the subject. The next thing, thesis. What is the writer trying to say about this subject? You know, what point is the writer trying to make? Okay, that's the thesis. The audience is the person, to whom the writer seems to be addressing the written work. All right, the essay, whatever it is you're reading. But the audience also influences how the writer chooses to write something. So, you know, one example would be is if you're sending an email to someone, are you going to write the email differently if you're sending it to an instructor versus if you're sending it to your best friend? Yeah. You might talk about, you know, certain things. You might give certain details and background information. If you're trying to explain a situation, you might give that to an instructor versus not having to give that to a friend because the friend already knows it. So there are different things to consider depending on the audience, and different audiences call for different ways of writing. And then the purpose, you want to think about the purpose of the written piece. Okay, so why did the author choose to write this essay? What is the author's intention? Is the author trying to just inform the audience? You know, just give lots of information and make the audience aware of this information? Is the purpose to entertain the audience? Is the writer trying to persuade the audience to do something or to believe something? So really, those are like your top three purposes: to inform, to entertain, and to persuade. So you want to consider, you know, what purpose you think the author is trying to fulfill. It might be all three. It might be two, because, you know, written pieces can be funny but also informative. Or written pieces can be, you know, persuasive but entertaining. So it could be all three of those. It could be two. It could be one. Typically, it's going to be more than one, though. And definitely, I don't know if you've heard of this word before, but annotation. You do what I was just referring to before, where you're taking notes, you're underlining, you're highlighting, you're asking questions in the margins of the book. That's called annotating. And you want to make sure that you annotate your texts, okay? Even if, you know, if you decide that you don't want to make, like, write in the book, find a way to make annotations in a notebook or something like that. So those are important attitudes and behaviors to adopt concerning how to read in this course and how reading will impact the writing that you do.